Hey guys, Triple B here. We just concluded the second official North American special event for the Budget Build Battle Tournament. If you're not familiar with the format, it's effectively just a single prize alternate way to play the Pokemon TCG. So no EXs, no Vs, no Radiants, and no A-Specs, and a slight limitation to your deck building as you can only include 2 copies of a card that have the same name. An exception being on Basic Energy, you can have as many of those as you want, and Basic Pokemon. If it evolves into a Stage 1, you can have 1 extra copy of the Basic, and into a Stage 2, you can have 2 copies of the Basic, just to help out with consistency when setting up and so that big basics aren't dominating the format. So effectively those special energies, trainers, Pokemons, 2 copies. And yeah, no limitations other than that. So people are saying it's similar to like GLC. Obviously differences being it's not a singleton format and you're not locked into one type of card. So you can be varying things, having like a Bibarel in a fire deck and stuff like that. But let's get into the top 8 decks from this event. So in 8th place, we are seeing a Conkeldurr list that was piloted by Mr. Mooseman. Conkeldurr having Gutsy Swing that does 250 damage, and if it's affected by a status condition, you ignore all energy in the attack cost. So theoretically, you can do 250 for no energy. It's kind of nuts, especially since we have Brute Bonnet that has the ability Toxic Powder. When this has an Ancient Boost capsule attached to it, you can poison both active Pokemon, making it so your Conkeldurr has a free attack and putting a little bit of chip damage into your opponent's active, so if they're just outside of that 250 damage output, well, they're going to die from poison. The other nice thing about this poison, though, is that you can be comboing it with Petulant, whose ability makes it so when it's in the active spot, between turns, when you check for poison, you're going to take 5 extra damage from poison. So effectively doing 6 damage between turns for poison. So Conkeldurr, it's a stage 2, you're not getting it online attacking turn 1, but theoretically you could have a Petulant in the active with a Brute Bonnet poisoning it and your opponent and take them out. Other attacker in here being Cloth, need a DTE to use Unhinged Scissors, but it's going to do a 30 base damage, and if the Pokemon is affected by a status condition, 160 more. Because you're using DTE, it effectively makes it so you're doing 170, but you're using the Brute Bonnet poisoning itself and your opponent, so basically 180 all up. Some ways to boost up your damage output though, we do have Binding Mochi, so if the Pokemon this is attached to is poison, increase the damage by 40, and you also have Rock Chestplate, giving you a bit of a defensive angle you can go for. If this is attached to a fighting Pokemon, it takes 30 less damage from attacks, making your Conkeldurr and your Cloths bulkier or more aggressive with these. What do you guys think of this list? I'm pretty impressed with it. The rest of the supporters in here are kind of standard staples. One that does stand out, I should probably call out, is Atticus. You can only use this card if your opponent's active Pokemon's poison, but you're going to shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 7. So effectively seeing as many cards as you do off Professor's Research, but without having to discard pieces, so things like rare candies that you don't want to be putting in the bin, you're able to hang on to, and still seeing 7 cards. So Atticus, very cool supporter, and when we find lists like this where it fits, yeah, very interesting to play around with it. In 7th place, we are seeing Sneaky Old Crab, running it back with one of his kind of like no more pain, more gains deck. So he's got Aggron, he's got Dodrio, he's got Steelix. The Dodrio having Zooming Draw, you can put 1 damage counter on it to draw a card, and then its attack scales up by 30 damage for every damage counter on it. Aggron also leaning into this damage counter mindset, having Angry Slam, doing 50 damage for each of your Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So Dodrio pinging itself, making Aggron stronger, definitely a great combo, and even Gengar in here with Netherworld Gate. If it's in the discard pile, bring it to your bench. It comes out with 3 damage counters on it, triggering your Aggron, and then combine that with Damage Pump to move 2 of those 3 onto 2 other Pokemon, boosting it up by 150 damage for your Aggron. The best way to get damage onto your board though, of course, being Steelix. So Earthquake, just costing 1 Steel Energy, is going to do 130 damage, which isn't bad. You're taking out pretty much all basic Pokemon in the format in most stage 1s, and doing some solid chip damage into larger targets. It's also going to do 30 damage to each of your bench Pokemon, making it so Aggron will have the maximum damage output when you decide to switch into it or go into it after Steelix gets KO'd. So yeah, can definitely be a very big threat. You do also have Monkey Dory in here just to kind of help out with counters. So if you're ever in a position where it's like, all right, Steelix is good, but he's about to knock out my Dodrio, you can just move some of the counters off onto one of your opponent's things, helping fix up some numbers and healing your guys effectively. The rest of the list, though, I feel like is pretty standard staples. Any questions, though, never hesitate to ask. In 6th place, we are seeing Pineapple Pizza, which, yeah, I fully agree with that, guys. What do you think? Pineapple on pizza? Yay? Nay? I'm saying 100% yay. And Pineapple Pizza was running a Arcanine list tonight, which also yay to that. So Arcanine's attack, Proud Fangs, doesn't cost any energy and does 30 base damage, but if any of your bench Pokemon are damaged, you boost that damage output by 90, effectively letting you do 120 for free. Froslass is going to make sure that you have some pings on your guys, so between turns, anything with abilities is going to take 10 damage, excluding Froslass, so it's a way to put some damage counters onto your own board. triggering it onto things like Conkeldurr or the Bibarel line, or potentially even a block Snorlax. If you set this up in the active just to buy yourself a bit of time where you're setting up your board, then Froslass can ping it, or if you just want to kind of like gust an opponent's draw supporter like a Bibarel, they're going to have a hard time getting that out of the active, have Snorlax sat in the active, and then theoretically Froslass just whittles down their board slowly and have Conkeldurr passing off counters to knock things out a little bit faster. Basculin in here for Gather the Crew to help set up your board a bit quicker, and even having another way to get damage counters on your board in Emolga, who has Skywave. It does 10 damage, and then 10 damage to everything on the bench, yours and your opponent's. So it's a great way to be able to go ping your Frostlasses. Maybe you don't even have Bibarels or Conkeldurrs on your board because it's like, well, I have Froslass. It makes my guys a bit of a liability. They're slowly getting knocked out. Just use Emolga once. You're pinging your Growlithes, you're pinging your Froslass, and then just your Arcanines turn after turn are doing that maximum 120, which is just a pretty solid number to hit, especially when you don't need an energy to do it, which frees up your attachments for a turn for those Conkeldurrs to kind of be playing around with counters. Honestly, I love seeing decks like this. Arcanine and Froslass are definitely mainstays in the format and usually make it into the top 8, so solid deck ran by some solid players. In 5th place, we are seeing Slowen's Annihilape deck. So we did see this in the weekly Australian tournament last night, and now we're seeing a slightly different take on it tonight by Slowen. Annihilape having Rage Fist, it does 70 damage for each prize card your opponent's taken, so it's sort of similar to like Charizard EX, just ramping up as the game goes on, or potentially like Aegislash EX if you want to have a different comparison. There is the Dustnoir line, letting you knock them out and put damage counters onto your opponent, so 13 from the Dustnoir or 5 from the Dusclops can help fix up some numbers for the Annihilape, or potentially even take knockouts, grabbing you a prize, and then boosting up your Annihilape's damage output so that it hits something in the active, taking another prize, so you could be having 2 to 3 prize turns. Yeah, respect it. The Bibarel line in here for some draw support, so draw until you have 5, and then Skwovet just letting you put your hand on the bottom of your deck, drawing 1 card, just refill your hand with Bibarel or with another draw supporter. Kind of up to you which order you go in. It would likely be like you probably research, get into a 7-card hand, play what you can, use Skwovet, go down to 1, Bibarel back into a 5-card hand, but sometimes it goes the other direction. Most of the cards in here, though, being standard staples, we do see Snorlax Doll in here. This card can only be played if it's in your opening hand. You can put it down as though it's a basic Pokemon and just, yeah. I guess it gives you another option to buy a little bit of time. Not bad, not bad. And then we also have Luxurious Cape, obviously just boosting up the HP of your Annihilape. Defiance Band, boosting up the damage output of your Annihilape, so you're triggering a Dusclops or a Dustnoir, go behind on prizes. If you don't take a knockout with the Dustnoir, then it's like, well, my Annihilape's hitting harder. So yeah, really good card to have in the list. And to make sure you're getting into these tool cards, you do have Town Store and Artisan to help set up your board. In 4th place, we're seeing BHB. Also running a Dustnoir list, so I don't really need to go over the ghosts, we just talked about them, but it does have Bronzong in here, which is a little bit different. Its attack Evolution Jammer just costs 1 Psychic Energy to do 30 damage and makes it so your opponent can't play any Pokemon cards from their hand to evolve cards in play. So effectively, you could just go second, theoretically. Use Salvatore, because this doesn't have an ability. You can evolve up into Bronzong immediately, attach Psychic Energy, and then tell your opponent you don't get to evolve. So if their deck is entirely reliant on evolving their pieces up, you might be locking them out of the game. They can play things like Evolution TM to kind of bypass this, since Bronzong just says you can't play them from hand. Evolution TM gets the Pokemon from the deck and evolves it up, so there is ways around it, but it definitely makes them work a little bit harder to get there. Another attacking option in here being Iron Boulder, Psychic and a colorless, you're doing 170 damage, but only if you have the exact same amount of cards in your hand as your opponent. So having cards like Iono to kind of just like shuffle and draw into, well, a new hand size, try and match what your opponent has. If you're on equal amount of cards, you could use Iono and then play nothing and hit the big number. So it's definitely an interesting concept to play around with. And the fact that you have the Dustnoirs does mean you could be going down on prizes, making it so your opponent takes a card into their hand, and that can kind of manipulate their hand size. So Iron Boulder has a little bit of a synergy with the Dustnoir in that aspect as well. Conkeldurr, just doing Conkeldurr things. And then the rest of the deck, it's, yeah, kind of standard staples. We're seeing the Tulip being in here, similar to Lana's Aid, but it gets you 4 cards back from the discard pile, being Pokemon or Energy, limited to just Psychics though, as it's getting you 4 instead of 3. So yeah, really interesting card to play around with in here. In 3rd place, we are seeing Tomy V. Also seeing some Dusclops in here, no Dustnoirs, having the Xatu just as a way to accelerate energy out to your bench. Psychic Energy from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon, draw 2 cards. Really solid way to charge up your attackers. Main one in here being Snorlax, who has Thumping Snore, does 180 base damage. Does put him to sleep though. And you're gonna have to flip 2 coins instead of 1 when you flip to see if it wakes up. A little bit tricky. The way they are getting around this in this build though is they had Festival Grounds. So each Pokemon that has any energy attached to it recovers from all special conditions and can't be affected by special conditions. So it basically just gives you a way to go, Snorlax doesn't fall asleep when I use this attack. And fair enough. It is a very thin count in here though, only having 1 copy of Festival Grounds. So it is, do kind of want to pick their brain about why they're not running, well, more switch cards to bounce the Snorlaxes around and wake them up, or therapeutic energy, which makes it so they don't get affected by special conditions, or more Festival Grounds, but I'm sure there's some logic that went into it, and I'd love to hear what it is. Klefki also being in here as a attacking option to a degree, has Joust 10 damage before doing any damage. Discard all Pokemon tool cards from the active Pokemon, so a great way to kind of just knock off some tools, but it also makes it so that basic Pokemon in play have no abilities when this is in the active, so it's a great way to kind of shut off things like Monkey Dories and the like. Hawlucha being in here just to gives you some pings to help fix up some numbers, and Manaphy for bench protection. Supporter cards in here, pretty standard. We are seeing Blindside in here though, giving you a way to kind of snipe things off the bench. 3 colorless energy, do 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So Hawlucha puts some pings out, and then you could have effectively snipers on any of your Pokemon that you're charging up with Xatu to use that attack. Evolution TM to get into your Zatus very quickly, and then for the draw supporters, yeah, we're seeing Ionos, Arvins, Force's Tenacity to get into your stadiums and your energies as you need them. And then an interesting one in Kofu, so put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck, and then you're gonna draw 4 cards. So yeah, that's the one we don't see played too much, so yeah, respect it. And Cypher Maniac's code breaking in here, just letting you look through your deck for 2 cards, putting them on top of it. So ideally you have a Psychic Energy in hand, you use this, you trigger Xatu, you're drawing into 2 cards that you've guaranteed yourself. I really love seeing that combo, it's really cool. In second place, we are seeing Gabe, who ran the Arcanine Froslass deck as well, so I'm not going to dig into this one too much. The attackers are effectively the same as the previous one, and overall the list is looking very similar. I think there's a few different things in terms of trainers, like trekking shoes I don't know that we saw in the first one, and there might be a few other techs in here. But overall, concept of the list is exactly the same. And then in first place, we are seeing, it's triple. It's me. I won. So I ran the Matchbox deck. I did run this a couple weeks back, made a couple tweaks to it though. I haven't played it for the North American special event. We do give out more points for this since it is a best finish limit of 1 for these special events. So it's like, well, let's try and place as high as we can, and manage to win the tournament, giving me 30 points towards the season for it. You have Charizard in here from Pokemon Go that doubles the value of all fire energy in play. Good stuff. You have Armarouge that lets you move fire energy from your bench Pokemon up to the active. So combining this with something like Magma Basin to get energy from the discard pile and onto your bench, as well as the tool card Experience Share. So when something gets knocked out, move an energy onto this. So you have Experience Share on Armarouge, something in the active gets knocked out, get an energy onto that, Magma Basin, get another energy from it. Ideally have a second thing with an Experience Share. You could theoretically keep 3 energy in play after an attacker's been knocked out, get an attachment for turn, move 4 energy up to a new attacker with Armarouge. It's a pretty solid combo. Having Entei in here has Blaze Ball. It scales up damage based on the amount of fire energy attached to it by 20. So it starts at 60 and then 20 more damage for each energy on there. You can do some pretty silly numbers, especially when you're doubling those with Charizard. If you have Charizard in play though, effectively you could be attacking for just 2 energy with Entei, and the ability Pressure makes it so you take 20 less damage from your opponent's attack. So effectively giving Entei 150 HP if they're trying to go for a one-shot. Moltres showing up here, having the Flare Float ability. If it has a fire energy attached to it, it has no retreat cost, so it's a great Pokemon to be able to just pop into the active after something gets knocked out. Armarouge can move an energy up to it, it has free retreat, pivot into a different attacker, or just use this for the attack Blazing Flight. Makes you discard 2 fire energy to use it, but you get to do 120 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So a great way to take out things like Bibarel, shutting down your opponent's draw power, or take out Froslass, so between turns you're not taking a bunch of damage counters. It's a really solid combo to go into, and the fact that it combos with Charizard amazingly is just another benefit, right? Charizard makes it so your fire energy count as 2. You use Moltres' attack, you can be using the attack for 2 energy, and you only have to discard 1 fire energy to pay for it then. So yeah, very solid combo. The second Moltres being played in here as well, making it so you can only run 1 of each, but gives you an attacker for in the early game or if you're in a pinch. Infernal Wings does 20 base damage, but if it has any damage counters on it, 70 more damage, so effectively hitting 90, taking out pre-evolutions in most stage 1s. Torkoal in here kind of being that Hail Mary play for concentrated fire. It's going to flip a coin for every fire energy attached to it, and for each heads does 80 damage. So with Charizard in play, 2 fire energy, you're flipping 4 coins, you could potentially hit 320 damage. Not bad for a single prize Pokemon. And Chuyu also being a solid attacker for this deck, having Mega Fire of Envy. It does 50 base damage, but if any of your Pokemon were knocked out from damage on your opponent's last turn, you're going to do 90 more, so letting you get up to 140, dealing with a lot of things in the format. So that Arcanine as an example, this was a great revenge attacker into them and helped out a lot when we did pair in the finals. Also having a 1-1 Bibarel line in here, this is pretty much the change I made from the previous week. It helped. It definitely helped. But yeah, rest of the deck, I feel like it kind of speaks for itself. Mela showing up because it's just a great supporter card for fire decks. If one of your Pokemon was knocked out on your last, or by your opponent on their last turn, you can attach a basic fire energy from your discard pile, then draw until you have 6. So just another thing to synergize with Armor Rouge and keep your energy in play. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the top 8 decks from tonight and which one you'd like to run in next week's tournament, or are you trying to cook up something completely different? If you're keen to try it out, there'll be a link in the description so you can sign up. It's every Friday night in the Australian Central Time Zone, and then yeah, first Friday of every month we'll do one in North America. So if that's a little bit easier for you to play, we've got that there too. There's always people looking for games in the Discord though, so if you want to play like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, just hop in there, go into the looking for games in the 3B format, and you'll have no issue finding someone to bash some games with. If you enjoyed the video though, hitting that like button is always a great way to let me know, and subscribe to keep up with the shenanigans. But if you're after another video, there should be something popping up here. Till next time though, stay golden, you Goombas.